Hi, it's Rira, and if you've been a longtime listener of Books and Boba, then you're probably aware that mystery is one of my favorite genres. That's why I'm pleased to introduce this episode's sponsor, Dear Alana, a new podcast from Tenderfoot TV. Dear Alana explores the issue of who's responsible when the systems that we trust to guide and protect us fail, leaving us worse off than we were before through the tragic story of Alana Chen. In 2019, the 24-year-old disappeared from Boulder, Colorado, leaving behind 24 journals chronicling her love of the outdoors, ultimate frisbee, and a dream of becoming a nun. She also kept a secret, one that put her dream at risk. At 14 years old, Alana confessed to her priest that she was attracted to women and was instructed not to tell her parents. Over the next 7 years, Alana covertly received conversion therapy, which her family later discovered and now believes played a role in her fate. So who's responsible? Through her journals, Alana's own words will guide us to those answers. An unraveling mystery and spiritual memoir about the promise of perfection and the price we pay to belong. Dear Alana is available now, and you can listen for free on Apple Podcasts. To binge the entire season ad-free, visit tenderfootplus.com. And now back to the main show.
You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here today with an author chat with Andrew Yang, the author of Not Here to Make Friends, a YA coming-of-age story revolving around an Asian American-centered reality TV show. As always, our podcast is supported by our listeners at patreon.com/booksandboba. So if you are so inclined, please support us to gain access to not only our exclusive members-only Discord server, but also to our monthly bonus Boba Chat episodes. On our latest Boba Chat, we had our friend Jessica Kim, the author of Stand Up Yumi Chung and Make a Move Sunny Park on the show. We had a really great chat with her about travel and all sorts of fun stuff. So definitely check it out if you are a Honey Boba supporter. But yeah, we had a really great chat with Andrew. We talked to him about his inspirations and journey into becoming a published author, as well as his inspirations for his book, Not Here to Make Friends. We and Andrew spent some time geeking out about Terrace House.
Yeah, so without further ado, here's our conversation with Andrew Yang. And we're here with Andrew Yang, the author of I'm Not Here to Make Friends. A lovely title, by the way. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. So yeah, it's really cool to get to meet you guys.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know if it's always a little weird for us to talk to people who've listened to us before, because I still live in a hermit-like state where I don't think anyone listens to our podcast, even though I do see the numbers. But thank you for listening, and thank you for coming on the show. We're happy to have
I will say, I mean, this is like a fun tidbit behind the scenes. Like, we had to double check that you weren't the other Andrew Yang.
Oh, like the mayoral candidate from New York?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how does it feel to have a semi-famous name now? Do you get mistaken a lot when you send out your emails to people?
I enjoy it. I think it's kind of fun. Yeah, like my coworkers, when I joined the company, they sent me the Andrew Yang 2020 memes and stuff like that. The funniest was there was one time I went to a restaurant. It was 886, like a Taiwanese restaurant in New York. And when I showed up, the hostess was like, "Oh, so you're Andrew Yang?" We were hoping it was the other one because they saw my name through the reservation.
Yeah. I think the candidate Andrew Yang is actually, he has a book coming out soon too about it's like a tech sci-fi dystopian novel. It's
I think we got the pitch for it too. Yeah. So that was a really weird timing.
Oh, I see. That's really funny.
Yeah. I guess we love to start off our author chats, as you may know, with the most basic of Asian American creative questions, which is, how did you how did you get started writing? How did you become a published author? Like, what was your journey like?
Sure, yeah. I guess like the first beginnings of that were probably when I was like an elementary school student. I was a big reader, and back then I loved reading fantasy, probably as my most favorite genre. So I would write fan fiction for the Aragon series, like the Aragon Eldest, like that fantasy series. It's like about a boy who like finds a dragon egg and becomes a dragon rider, that kind of thing. So yeah, those were kind of like the earliest beginnings, I guess. But when I first started to like really dream of like writing a book and publishing it was in high school. I had an English teacher, Miss Kroll, shout out Miss Kroll, who she kind of like mixed in a lot of creative writing assignments into her teaching. And I think that's kind of like how I really like developed a passion for creative writing. And I still remember like on the last day of the school year, like when I was kind of saying goodbye to all my teachers, she said something to me that I still remember that kind of planted the seed. She just said sort of randomly, we had never talked about this before, but she was like, I look forward to reading your book someday. So yeah, I guess that's like one of those moments that you have with like a teacher that for me, it really stuck with me. And I think like basically ever since then, I started thinking about it, like kind of dreaming about it a little bit. But yeah, never really put it into practice or anything. Just kind of had it in the back of my mind. But yeah, I was always a big reader. And I guess like around 2018, like 2 years after I graduated college, randomly as a New Year's resolution, I was like, I've kind of dreamed about writing for so long. Let me start just trying to actually have a writing habit as part of my life, just, for this New Year's resolution. And so, yeah, that's how things really started, of me actually starting to write consistently and trying to learn how to write fiction. And yeah, I just was kind of just trying to write stories, like as much as I could since then. And then once the pandemic started and we were all stuck at home, I guess that's when I finally kicked into the gear of like trying to learn about the publishing industry. At that point, I had a manuscript finished for a YA book, so I was like learning about the literary agents and like the querying process and stuff like that. I listened to a ton of podcasts, so that's kind of how I fell in love with the kind of like these book podcasts and just trying to listen to them as much as I could. And yeah, around that time, I was also watching a ton of reality TV. As one does. So I was watching a ton of like Terrace House and Selling Sunset and other more trashy ones that I won't expose myself on. And kind of like was brewing the idea for this particular project. And I think like one of the big inspirations was I read this essay written by the writer Gia Tolentino about her time on like this really, I'm sure they don't make this anymore, but it was like an MTV reality show, I think, called Boys versus Girls. And I think that essay really sparked my imagination as far as like trying to write a story set on a reality show that kind of like has like all of the splashy, like silly elements that you'd expect from a story about a reality show, but that hopefully by the end actually kind of sneaks in a lot of character development and like kind of once you're at the end looking back on the story, you're kind of like, oh yeah, like wow, this person really went on quite a journey through the medium of this show. So yeah, that's kind of when the ideas came together and I started writing this book.
Your day job is being a coder, right?
Yeah, I have a day job as a software engineer. That's right.
It's completely different from creative writing. So I'm just curious, like, did you take creating writing workshops or classes on your free time?
In college, I took a poetry class, and in high school, I took like some summer creative writing classes. So that's kind of like the formal stuff that I've done. But other than that, it's mostly just me like alone in my, my room writing on my little Google Doc. Just trying
so classic
to
practice.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool though. I mean, what other resources did you consult to like kind of develop your craft? If say one of our listeners is someone who has an interest in creative writing, but did not go to say a MFA program or study in undergrad or even have access to classes, where would you direct them to? Like,
for sure. Yeah. There, definitely over the years, I've read like a couple of of random kind of like those books about writing, like The Elements of Style is like a pretty famous one, I think, by like E.B. White, that just have general rules about writing sentences and traditional wisdom, like don't use the passive voice, like stuff like that, like sentence structure and whatnot. So I think some of those lessons I've tried to absorb little by little just from reading those. But I think the thing that I draw like more from is just finding books that I really, really like and kind of like subconsciously trying to like take in some aspects of what makes those books so engaging to read. Like, I guess for YA, I really like a fast, like sit down, start reading and get through 100 pages, like just like that type of a read. And so I think just like reading a bunch of those and kind of like, I guess, studying like, okay, they write in this type of voice, the sentences and kind of like the paragraphs are structured in a certain way that make it, that you kind of hit these like moments using like the structure and the way the sentences are written. I guess like just trying to absorb a lot of that just through reading. Yeah, I read a lot and I try to like have my reading and my writing like kind of inform each other, I guess. If that makes sense. Just because you have to read your own work so much and like that's how you like learn about your tendencies and try to correct them over time, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, writing a whole novel just seems such a daunting task for me, a podcaster. So I applaud you for your achievements, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I lied earlier when I said the most basic question is how you became a writer, because the most basic Asian American creative question is actually, how do your parents feel about you publishing books?
Yeah, that's a really funny question. I feel like, all throughout my childhood and into like high school and college, the advice was very much like, it's like the classic, like you first have to make sure you're okay financially. Like if I would express some type of interest in like art or, like maybe I'll be an English major, they try to swoop in and shut it down pretty quickly. Yeah. So I think I was always like pretty heavily influenced, both like overtly and like kind of subconsciously into trying to like, study the sciences or engineering or something like this. But they were also like very supportive of me being a reader. They're the ones who got me into reading, like buying my first books, taking me to Barnes and Noble so I could buy novels that I wanted to read. So I definitely feel like they are the ones who gave me my love of reading as well. So yeah, it's kind of like, I guess, double-edged kind of a thing. But when I told them that I was like trying to write seriously and get a book published, I think my dad, he's pretty chill. Like he was kind of like, oh, that's cool, whatever. But my mom was definitely like, all right, you better not let this take away from your job. Like your job is your main thing. Like you can't let this, don't be like one of those people that just stops working and kind of like lets their career fall apart because they have this side thing. Like don't get too into it basically. And I think she was like that all the way through basically the entire process until I finally had like the physical advanced reader copy to give to her. And she started reading it. And she's not really a reader. So like reading my book was probably like one of the few novels that she's read, at least in English. But when she started reading it, I was like home for vacation and she was reading it while I was there. Like every day, like a couple times per day, she'd like pull me aside and be like, oh, this passage was really interesting. Or like, oh, wow, I really like this, this thing that you wrote, which was really, really cool. Yeah, definitely recommend having your mom read your books to all the writers out there. It can be a very positive experience.
And I feel like that's very rare because like we've talked to authors where they're like, oh, my parents are proud of me. They, bought multiple copies and gave it to their friends, but they've never read my book. And I feel like that's a very common experience.
Well, I mean, there are also authors who we talked to where their parents become their most critical editors. Like, I don't know why you wrote this. You should have done this better. Why is this like this? So I think your situation is probably the best case scenario for a parent reading a child's book. And it's really cool because like I think that's kind of the pattern we see too, is just they're concerned because they don't think this is a viable option or a way to, create or make money or be accepted. And the moment it becomes physical, right? Like for some people, for some of us, it's like being featured in like the ethnic newspaper. And for others, it's like holding like a physical book published by like a major publisher, that it becomes like, oh, this is something that was possible for my kid. I just couldn't see it. And that's a really cool kind of growth too.
Yeah. I mean, she definitely is still like, all right, sure, you published one book, that's cool, but like, don't spend too much time on this still. Like, you still gotta make sure your job is the most important thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned Terrace House earlier, and it's really funny because when we were pitched your book, in my head, I kept calling it the Terrace House book because not only is the premise like similar because it's like a reality show where you have 6 characters living together, but also like the cover was very like, oh, this reminds me of Terrace House, like the thumbnail. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, like, who's your favorite cast member from Terrace House? And do you have any favorite moments from the show?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so I guess just to give a little background in case any listeners haven't watched the show, it's basically one of those hidden camera shows where 6 strangers live in a house together, going about their daily lives, but with cameras filming them. And so, yeah, I guess I've seen almost every episode of the show that's on Netflix. But the season that I think I found most fun to watch was probably the most recent one in Tokyo, like leading up to the Olympics. And I think the initial cast was just like really well put together. So there was just like a lot of great dynamics between them. And there is this one character, Ruka, who is like, he's like 20 years old. He has like a part-time job. And I think kind of like one of the big dynamics of the show is the cast members all differ in age. You have some people who are right out of college, some people who are like in their mid-20s, and some people who are close to 30. And so like the older ones will always encourage the younger ones, like follow your dreams and like, like keep working hard, like focus on your skills. And, that's what's going to help you in life. So like they were all trying to do that to this guy, Ruka, who was like the youngest. He was like 20. But I guess like the show commentators. Sorry, not to get too into the weeds, but one of the other aspects of the show is that there's kind of like some commentators who come on screen every like 10 or 15 minutes to commentate on what's just happened in the show. And they always make fun of this guy, Ruka, just because he's like not very smart. And like he always says like silly kind of childish stuff. Like some people asked him, what is his dream? And his answer was that like, oh, I want to be Spider-Man.
Oh my God.
And
yeah.
the other people
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. And the other people in the house are like, oh, you mean you want to like, your dream is like play Spider-Man like on TV or something. And he's like, no. My dream is to be Spider-Man. My dream is to like shoot webs out of my hands and get bitten by a radioactive spider. And the other cast members are like, well, that's impossible, right? And it's fake, right? And he's just like, no, but you don't understand. My dream is to be Spider-Man. So I think it's probably got to be him, just for like just kind of like the childlike wonder, I guess.
Yeah. My favorite character from Terrace House is, I say character, but cast member, is Tsubasa, the hockey player who, has like a heart of gold. And, she has like a great dad who like runs a noodle shop. And I don't know, like she was just like so wholesome, and her romance with Shion was also like very sweet. And I think one of my favorite moments in Terrace House is actually like from Boys and Girls in the City. It's like one of the first seasons that they showed on Netflix, and it's when Arisa, the hat lady, the milliner, she turns down a date by suggesting they go to Costco.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, this is like the most embarrassing way to turn down a date, by saying, yeah, let's go to Costco.
Yeah, I remember that
our
scene.
Roommate.
Yeah. The guy kept being like, oh yeah, you mean you and I can go to Costco, right? And she's like, no, I want everyone to go.
Yeah, like the thing I really liked about Terrace House was just, it's a very calm show. Like, you don't really see the cameras, but at the same time, the cast members are very aware that they are on TV, and sometimes they, fake storylines. And I just thought that dynamic was really interesting because you show that in your book as well. You have characters who are purposely playing roles because they know that that is what the viewers want to see, or that's what the producers expect from them. Did you do any research on reality show production for your book?
To be honest, I really didn't. I think other than just kind of reading articles about this particular show. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of like a pretty tragic kind of end to this show is like no longer made because something pretty terrible happened at the end of the most recent season, relating to how the producers kind of like manipulate the storylines in the show, where the producers like the show is kind of billed as having no script, but like it's definitely well known that the producers like tell the actors like what to do. They set up scenes. It's just like any other reality show in that it's sort of fake. So I think just generally knowing that, and trying to like have that as a dynamic in the book, that's definitely one element that's really drawn from real life. But yeah, I think it's more of just like general knowledge about reality shows that have like seeped in over the years from reading articles like analyzing The Bachelor or analyzing Terrace House, and kind of just developing a sense of like, these shows may like bill themselves as having no script, but there's some pretty common practices where the producers go in and like tell the people exactly what to do or use the editing to make people turn out a certain way. I remember like a few years ago, a friend and I used to just send each other articles about The Bachelor, like analyzing like, okay, like, when Rachel is down to like Brian and Pete in that one season of The Bachelorette, and like everyone's rooting for Pete, and they make Brian like seem to be sort of like this meathead, like what's kind of going on behind the scenes, like things like that. I think like just absorb over the years to inform like what goes on in this book.
Yeah, I think it's really hilarious how American reality shows are so different from Asian reality shows. I don't know, like American reality shows, they really play up the drama, and I feel like the storylines are very much in your face. And this is just from like a production standpoint, but I always find it hilarious that in like shows like The Bachelor or I guess like I can't think of anything else on the top of my head, but they don't eat on camera because it will affect the audio. So you see them like talking in a kitchen, and I'm like, they're not eating. All they're doing is drinking alcohol, and this is a ploy by the producers to like get them as intoxicated as possible to create less of a filter and more drama. Whereas like with Asian reality shows, I don't know, they like I do want to say they're more chill, and there seems to be less of a script, but that's not true. There's always going to be a script with reality shows. But yeah, like the vibes are very different, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I remember watching I think it was a documentary or like a behind the scenes on The Real World, which is like one of the original one of these shows, right? Hidden camera shows of young people living in the house together. And when they were asked like why they were like in swimsuits all the time, they were like, well, when we're in swimsuits, they can't mic us up. And so that's why like they're constantly just like swimming in that show to have privacy.
I mean, it's very interesting, like shows with like The Bachelor and Bachelorette, there's like multiple producers too. So they have like a stake in like getting their contestant, their star, to like get as much screen time as possible. So they fabricate a lot of drama. I'm saying this as someone who like went to film school and did intern on like reality shows. So it's just like very funny to see how much goes into like the manipulation of like creating a storyline. And like I think it's such a fun premise for a book.
Yeah. why don't you tell our listeners about the show on your book, Hotel California, that your characters are all cast members of?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not here to make friends. Follows the two girls who go on this teen reality show called Hotel California for a summer. So one of them is from Illinois. She grows up in a town where there's not a lot of other Asians. And she kind of comes into the show like looking to find out who she could be in a setting like this, where she isn't as much of an outsider. She's with other Asians for the first time and kind of feels like she has something to prove. And then on the other side, we have Yuna, who's from New York. She's grown up in a very cosmopolitan city, has like a pretty good sense of who she is, but is kind of looking to get away from like the claustrophobic in a community like that she is normally kind of living in, and just be with people who don't have any prior knowledge of her, who might have any like negative expectations of her of being kind of like a bully or like a mean girl. So the two of them come on the show, and they kind of fitting two of like the classic reality show tropes, or like teen drama kind of tropes of like the queen bee and the wannabe. And so they kind of when they go on the show, they sort of like start to fall into those types of patterns, getting into small conflicts with each other. And I would say like the producers of the show are probably kind of encouraging this somewhat. But then kind of the twist is as the show goes on, they kind of start to become aware of the ways they're being manipulated against each other, and starting to understand what the producers are doing to manufacture certain narratives on the show that kind of fit in with the narratives that they've come into the show having about themselves, but that they want to try to break. So kind of the twist from there is like whether or not they're able to kind of team up and work against the show and kind of write their own ending, or if like they'll kind of fall prey to what the producers want and give in to kind of their worst tendencies.
Yeah, like you have a cast of 6 in the show Hotel California, and I was just really curious on like why you decided to only write in Yuna and Sabine's POVs when, you know, you could have easily written in 6 POVs.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it's just because the kind of I've sort of thought of the core of the story as kind of like a variation on this whole like queen bee versus wannabe type of story that you see in a lot of like, especially for example, like Mean Girls. That, you know, that's like one of my favorite high school movies. I drew a lot of inspiration from that, where you have like I think her name's Katie, like Lindsay Lohan's character, coming in to this like high school from being homeschooled before, like being like kind of not that cool, but then kind of falling in with like the plastics. And then on the other hand, you have like Regina George, who's the leader of the plastics. She's like popular. She's like kind of like the mean girl. And they kind of have that type of like classic high school conflict type drama. But then wanting to play around with that, give more of the perspective of the quote unquote mean girl. And then try to use the reality show setting to like put a twist on that type of story. So that was always kind of like the core story that I had in mind. And so that's why I focused on those 2 characters.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because in reality shows, they love to pit 2 women against each other. That's usually like the main conflict in any show. Yay, patriarchy. But one of the things I really liked about your book is because you have a cast of 6 Asian Americans, they're kind of pulled from different geographical locations. You have Sabine, like you said, she's from Illinois. You have Yuna, who's from Manhattan or one of the boroughs in New York. You have Danny, who is from Texas, I believe, but like went to school in New England. So everybody's kind of from different places. And I just thought it was funny how there were these differences between like how California Asians are from East Coast Asians and Heartland Asians. So can you tell us like what you believe those key differences are to our listeners?
Oh, yeah, sure. I feel like to give a really good answer, you'd probably have to do some type of like academic study of this. But just like from my kind of like amateur sociological analysis based on just, I live in New York, so just meeting people from all over the country in New York in like kind of different friend groups. I think, okay, starting with West Coast Asians, I feel like West Coast Asians are definitely like, I at least in my opinion, like quite distinctive. Like first of all, you have like kind of the general like California vibes, like just like, all right, not to dig too much into stereotypes, but when I picture like a California Asian, I'm thinking of someone who's been drinking boba since they were a kid, wearing bands, hanging at the mall with their friends, just like very like comfortable with themselves. Like because a lot of these high schools in the Bay Area are like 60-70% Asian, never really had a problem getting bullied for being Asian, like always had tons of Asian friends and just like was always very comfortable with kind of that part of themselves. So yeah, I feel like that kind of plays a lot into what I sort of see as like the vibe of like a West Coast Asian is growing up like that kind of. And then, so yeah, I'm from the East Coast. So I grew up in Massachusetts in a town that I think it was like maybe 25 or 30% Asian. But like definitely at times when I was growing up, like felt like there's like, we were like enough of a minority that I felt like kind of out of place. I definitely got picked on, at times. And so I think like I feel like for a lot of us, maybe it's like later in life that we kind of, it's not like we have like, just to name a couple places around the Bay Area, like Milpitas Square, like Cupertino Village, where we can go and there's just like a Ranch 99 and like a boba shop with like tons of like other Asian high schoolers there to hang out with. Like, I think you kind of come into your identity a bit later. So, it's not like you didn't grow up around any Asians, but I feel like you definitely maybe, it's just like not something that you are like super in touch with, like from the beginning, right? It was probably pretty separated in your life, like your weekends at Chinese school or, whatever language school versus like your weekdays at your normal school, like kind of being a different version of yourself, kind of. And then it just, maybe it's kind of like a spectrum from there. I think I have a lot of friends from college because I went to college in the Midwest in Chicago who are from towns in like the Midwest where, yeah, Asians are, they were maybe like a couple other Asians in their grade. And, I don't think it like necessarily makes a huge difference. Like obviously who you are, just generally like how you were raised, like what type of personality you have makes a big difference as well. But just like kind of the types of experiences you've had to have like to fit in and to like make friends. You also probably just at different times of your life have had the experience of like not really thinking, like feeling bad about being Asian or like wishing you weren't so different. And yeah, it's kind of hard to say exactly if there's like a general way that plays out, but I feel like those experiences definitely can like still inform who you are like going forward in like different ways. But yeah, I guess hard to say like as definitively.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of like anthropology and sociology there. Like,
yeah.
Asian American history is all about the movement of people. And, because of that movement, where you end up may be a place where there are no other Asians. Like I grew up in Southern California in San Gabriel, the city of San Gabriel. So like, from elementary school all the way to even college in the UC system, I've always been in schools where there were at least 40% of the student body were Asian. And so, it wasn't until I moved to DC for grad school where I kind of felt like a minority for the first time in my life. But that was also when I met like other Midwest Asian. One of my good friends from business school, she's from Indiana. And yeah, she totally grew up as the only Asian girl in her entire city because her parents moved there for work. And she definitely had like a complex with like, with like growing up not wanting to be Asian, like wanting to like getting mad at her mom for putting on Asian snacks when her friends came over and things like that. So I mean, there's definitely something to be said about, because when you're growing up, being different isn't actually like, not like as an adult, like we revel in our differences, right? Like we want to be exceptional in our own way. Whereas when you're growing up, especially in high school or middle school, like being different is like, it sets you apart from like the mainstream social groups. And it's kind of like you don't want to be different at all, right? You don't want to stick out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's, I love asking questions about like geographical differences with Asian American experiences, because like Marvin said, he's from San Gabriel. He grew up in the majority. And I just feel like California Asians have like just, they're so solid and secure in their identity. Like it doesn't even, like they don't even think about their Asian identity. It's just like, oh, like that's just part of who I am. Like, I don't really have to think about how I need to navigate the world as a person of color, as someone who is part of the minority. And for my personal experience, I grew up in the East Coast and also the South. So I have a very different experience compared to Marvin. And it's always just fascinating to me to see like, to just like see the differences. And another thing I really enjoyed about your book is how you absolutely nail the Korean church life. Just like the way the mom's gossip network works, and how like the kids are kind of pitted against each other. And I think this is also like a very East Coast Asian thing, because we are very competitive. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because of the schools, and there's like, you know, the New England elite, old money, and we try really hard to like break into that class, but competition is like really, really steep. But I'm just like curious, like, was that your personal experience, like going to church and dealing with gossip like that? Like, how did you nail that experience so well?
Yeah, so I definitely did base that on like my family went to a Chinese church in Northern California. Actually, I grew up in Northern California, so we went to a church there, and definitely my memories from there. That's basically what I wrote, like drew from to write the scenes in the church in this book. So I think it's definitely exaggerated in the book, but
I don't know, man. I felt like it was very accurate.
But I definitely did feel like within the church that I grew up in, like maybe not overtly, but definitely subtly, there was certainly a hierarchy where like there were like these two sisters who I'm still friends with actually, who like were definitely like the two smartest in school, and the ones that the parents always talked about and would say like to their mom, like your girls are so smart, like they stand out so much. And like the pastor would ask trivia questions like when after Sunday school is over, when like the kids and the parents were all back together to eat, and like this girl would answer them and everyone would be like, oh wow, like applauding, like she's like 6 years old and she knows when the Civil War started, when it ended, stuff like that. So definitely like drew on those experiences. And yeah, it's I think just because when I was experiencing that, like that was so separate from my main like life in day-to-day school, and it felt so different. Like Northern California, it's pretty diverse, but it still has that feel of like when you're at school, like there's not as many Asians and you're kind of in a minority, versus when you go to this church, like everybody's Asian. It's like a different world, and different aspects of like your social interactions come out. So I thought that would be sort of similar for UNA, because in the New York school system, you get shuffled around so much that you don't necessarily have consistent friends. I think like throughout your time growing up, you kind of have your elementary school friends, then suddenly you have your middle school friends, then you have your high school friends. Like I thought the structure of her life would probably be similar enough that it would make sense to draw from that.
Yeah, I am really grateful that my parents did not have like a gossip network. We didn't really grow up religious, and my mom's friends, like she had one friend with a son my age, but I was always compared to him because she really liked how he cleaned his room, and my room was always a mess. So that was how we were compared. Just like, why can't you be as clean as this guy?
Yeah, and like with comparing notes with parents too, I think it's always really funny because like a parent would be like, oh my God, why can't you be like this person from church? Like they got into Princeton, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
And like, but at the same time, they're like acting nice to that person and also their parents, because they were like, I want the scoop of like how you got into an Ivy League college. I'm like, there's so much politics in it. And speaking of politics, I like most of your conflict in your book is very internal. Like Sabine and Yuna, they misread each other a lot, and they're navigating like the politics and the images from reality show TVs, and they don't really vocalize their true thoughts with each other until they're kind of forced to. Was it difficult to maintain that like silent dialogue between them and to like build up the conflict without like having, I guess, very dramatic scenes where in American reality TV you have like screaming matches and people who are like pulling each other's hair?
I think that's definitely something that I had to work on a lot in the editing process. Like, I think my tendency when I'm drafting these things is to probably make it a little too internal, like not overt enough. And so, I definitely wanted to have kind of the dramatic confrontations and like the big messy scenes that you see in reality TV, especially like towards the end of the book, because like it or not, like that's kind of why we're watching when it comes to reality shows. In a lot of cases. But I definitely had to work a lot on like trying to sprinkle those in throughout in a way that made sense, but didn't feel like too, I guess, out of the blue, like to try to always build it up gradually. But I think, like that's just something probably that I need to work on as a writer over time, is like figuring out the right balance between having the emotions and kind of the conflict of the book be clear enough, like happening enough on the page that the reader can follow it. Like probably fighting my tendency to just try to make it very like subtexty. And I
actually like the subtext because, you see very clearly both characters' internal thoughts. And so I think the conflict is on the reader's side because we just want these kids to talk to each other and like find out they're not like enemies. But they're just all, not only are they being manipulated by the whole reality TV setting, but they're also like, they're carrying their own internal prejudices with them, right? Like Sabine growing up in the Midwest has all this like internal defense mechanisms built up. And Yuna coming from the Korean church world also has similar like defenses, right? Her instinct is to attack before she gets hurt, right? And so I thought it was a really interesting mix because that's what reality TV is, right? You put all these personalities together and you watch everything get heightened because of not only the scrutiny, but also the close proximity with each other.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like just in life in general, like some of your most emotionally transcendent moments are like when you're being vulnerable with someone that you care about and just saying like, this is who I am. This is how I feel. And, please I'm putting it all on the line for you. Like, please accept it. But it's like so difficult to do that. I feel like maybe, especially in the modern world where life is taking you to so many different places for school, for work and things like that. And so like, you meet a lot of people, but there's probably fewer people in your life that you really get to know deeply, like over a long period of time.
Yeah, I really like the relationship that Yuna had with her mom and also her father, who is in Korea. He's like absent because of work, and just like the kind of resentment that Yuna has for her dad, but is like unable to kind of release it upon him. I thought that was a really well depicted dynamic. Is there a reason why you decided to have that relationship shown in the book?
That's a good question. I guess it's all probably just based on different things that I've experienced or seen, different people that I've met, kind of sort of just drawing from like a general well of like situations, because I definitely like know of people kind of that's kind of their family situation. And, I'm not experienced it myself, but like having experienced other types of conflict or heartache when it comes to my relationship with my parents, I guess it just kind of, that's the kind of the dynamic that I thought made sense. Yeah. There.
Yeah. I mean, we're winding down to the end of our time, and I guess like my final question, and I'll give Marvin a chance to ask his final question. But why did you choose Palm Springs as the location for Hotel California?
Yeah, to be honest, like I feel like when I write, like I definitely notice this is whenever I write, whatever I'm writing very much reflects what I'm doing at the time or very recently. Like if I write something, like I'll probably reference stuff or draw from stuff that like kind of just happened to me. And so at the time when I was writing this book, like it was during COVID, but like right before COVID, I had taken like a trip with my parents to Palm Springs. So like that setting was kind of fresh in my mind, I guess. And I like it's definitely like an interesting like mix of, I guess, different things that go on there. There's kind of like the art community that's there. It's like pretty close to Hollywood and LA. It's like there's obviously all the vacationers. It's definitely like a vacation-y kind of locale. So I think just like the mix of those things, like being fresh from having just gone there, kind of, like my tendency is just to like draw from whatever just happened to me. So that's probably why.
I will say, as someone who lives in SoCal, I was like, Palm Springs, and then they're going to downtown LA. That's a lot of traffic, and I just couldn't help but like calculate like how long is that commute? Like, what time are they leaving? This is only a problem that your SoCal readers are gonna have.
Yeah. I guess I kind of exposing myself a little bit. I'm definitely like I really have not spent that much time in SoCal, just like here and there. So yeah, apologies for, I guess, probably some factual, inconsistencies as far as all the different travel back and forth. I've never really experienced like the bad LA traffic, even though I've heard about it.
I mean, you probably won't get as much on the way to Palm Springs because that is going out, like way out of the city. Like that's a good, I think, 2-hour drive typically. So it's not until you hit downtown. Downtown is usually where everything congregates because you have like 4 major freeways just converging in like a city that's not like super efficient with their interchanges.
I mean, it's funny that we're talking about like LA traffic because like my mug right now, I mean, you probably can't read it, but it says, I would take the 101 to the 10 to the 405 for you. And that's pretty much how, like, my friend gave this to me as a gift. And I'm like, wow, you're a real one because you would battle so much LA traffic for me.
Those are the three worst ones.
Those are the worst ones. Yeah. God forbid if someone asked me to pick them up at LAX. That's how I show my true love for them,
Yeah. All right. Well, Not Here to Make Friends came out a few months ago. Are you working on anything else? Like, is there another book in the works? Are you taking a break? Like, what's in the future for author Andrew Yang?
Yeah. I do have another book coming out next summer that hasn't been announced yet. So yeah, I'm kind of wrapping up the work on that. And yeah, now I'm trying to draft a third book. They're both YA. Yeah, just kind of try to keep exploring different aspects of high school.
Yeah, but congratulations on your book. Good luck on your future books. And thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us on Books and Boba. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It was a lot of fun.
And that was Andrew Yang, the author of Not Here to Make Friends, out now at booksellers everywhere, including the Books and Boba bookshop. As always, if you buy books from our bookshop, not only do you support the Books and Boba podcast, but also your local bookstore. So definitely check it out at booksandboba.com. And as always, another way to support the Books and Boba podcast is to become a patron on our Patreon. Like we mentioned on the top of the show, Patreon members get access to our members-only Discord server where you can chat with us and fellow club members in real time. And Honey Boba members have access to our monthly bonus episode where I and sometimes a guest will chat about non-book things that's going on in our lives. So definitely check it out at patreon.com/booksandboba.
Before we close out, I just want to ask a quick question to Marvin because we didn't have time to talk about it, or I guess I didn't give him an opportunity to talk about it. But before we close, Marvin, who is your favorite cast member from Terrace House?
I never finished the first season of Terrace House. So I only know the first 6 people.
No wonder you were quiet during the conversation. I thought you were one of us.
I enjoyed the show, but I just I don't know. I think I watched like the first 3 episodes, and then I just never picked it up again. It's one of those things similar to my pop culture gap of Ghibli films, where I figured I probably would like this show, so I just never went back to it because I figured it would always be there. So yeah, I guess you could add that to my wall of shame of things that I have not watched.
I have no words. Wow.
You look very
this entire
disappointed right
time I thought no, because I thought because you are someone who consumes reality TV, you watch a lot of Top Chef, so I thought Terrace House was like one of your shows. You're the one who recommended Physical 100 to me, so I'm like really shocked right now.
I like competence porn reality TV. Like chill reality TV is fun to watch, but it's not something I seek out. So I guess that's my excuse.
Okay, well,
yeah.
So for the month of September, we are reading The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang, and this is Marvin's pick.
Yeah, it is a family drama / murder mystery about a family that runs an Americanized Chinese restaurant in the middle of Wisconsin, and the drama that unfolds when the patriarch is found murdered. It's been a while since we've had like a Chinese restaurant focused book, so I'm really excited to dive back into this world. Always love a good immigrant drama, and it also has murder, so it checks a lot of boxes for our podcast's taste.
Yeah, you know how much I love murder, especially cozy murder.
Yeah,
because this sounds less gruesome than some of the other murder mysteries that we've read on this podcast.
Yeah, so as always, if you finish this book already and have thoughts to share with us, please let us know on our Discord or on Goodreads. We always love to include the feedback from our listeners in our podcast whenever possible. So yeah, looking forward to reading this, looking forward to chatting about this with all of you. But with that, that'll do it for this episode of Books and Boba. Thank you once again to Andrew Yang for joining us, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Ri Ryu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, you can support Books and Boba and Asian American authors by purchasing books at our bookshop.org account. Check out the link in our show notes and also at booksandboba.com. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.